Hello everyone, welcome to the political science class. Today I'll be taking on class 12. The topic is Cold War and we'll continue from the previous session. Okay, in the first session we talk about Cold War, the meaning of Cold War, the causes of the Cold War, bipolarity, the challenge to bipolarity. Okay, the challenge to bipolarity came in the form of the non-alignment movement in 1961. They held the first conference in Belgrade, that is the capital of Yugoslavia. We have stopped there. In this conference, 25 non-aligned nations took part along with 3 observers. Okay, these 3 observers were not a member of the non-aligned nation. Please remember that. In these 25 nations, special mention has to be given to these countries and these personalities. India, we have Jawaharlal Nehru. From Ghana, we have Nkrumah and Nkrumah. From Yugoslavia, we have Joseph Tito, and from Egypt, we have Gamal Abdel Nasser. They are considered as the founding father of the non-alignment movement. All right. In this conference, they adopted a 27-point declaration. In this 27-point declaration, the key word will be they condemn colonialism. All right. Number 2, they appeal for peace and stability in the Cold War. And number 3, disarmament, especially in the use of nuclear weapons. Okay, next, the features of the non-alignment movement. The first, isolationism. This word isolationism means to keep aloof, all right? And when we use this in international politics, it means countries not taking part in international affairs or any global activities. But NAM is not isolationism because they play the role of mediating. That is talks. Countries coming for a talk so that reconciliation, all right, could be made between the Cold War era. Okay, this is especially in the Cold War. And neutrality. The next feature is neutrality. Neutrality means not taking side. That means if a country is doing right, you are not taking the support or neither you are objecting. But the non-alignment nations along with India, they did not maintain this neutrality because they were involved in resolving crisis, especially in the Cuban Missile Crisis. Okay, that is in your following topic. And number 3, the important is they did not lose their identity. All right. Okay. The next topic, aims and objectives of the non-alignment movement. The first one, they condemn colonialism and imperialism because they were victim of these two for over 100 of years. All right. Point number 2, the second aims will be they appeal for disarmament. Okay, no use of nuclear weapons. Number 3, N, E and the N, and racial discriminations and apartheid. All right. Number 4, it called for cooperating with the United Nations, especially in peacekeeping effort. Number 5, it advocated or it asked for a new international economic order, NIEO, as well as human rights and environmental rights. So these are the aims and objectives of the non-alignment movement. Next, we'll focus here, new international economic order. Okay, new international economic order. Right after the Second World War and the beginning of the Cold War, many smaller countries, they started to get their independence. All right. Despite their political independence, they still suffered from poverty and underdevelopment, that is their economic area. So they asked for a new international economic order. In this regard, in 1972, all right, in short, the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTD, okay, they prepare a report. All right, and this report is titled Towards a New Trade Policy for Development. So this is the name of this report. Okay, in this report, it says that the non-aligned countries and the smaller countries from Asia, Africa, and Latin America, they fall into the category of least developed country, LDC. All right, least developed country. Now, this is the first one. The second, they suggested some changes, especially in the trade policy. Okay, what are these suggestions? The first, it says that the least developed countries should control their own resources, maybe their economic, their goods, commodities, or minerals. All right. Second, improved technology from the developed countries should be transferred to the LDCs at a very lower rate. All right. Number 3, economic aid, assistance, be it in monetary or any in goods or services, this aid should be of better terms and conditions. Okay. And last, they should have an increased voice in economic organizations like the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. So these were the proposals that were made in the report in the United Nations Conference of Trade and Development. All right. So these are all under the new international economic order. All right, we'll go to the next topic. Okay, our next topic is on major conflict in the Cold War era. Okay, during the Cold War, the world faced 2 major crises. All right, the first is in the form of the Korean crisis. Okay, Korea. The Korean Peninsula, she was controlled by the Chinese for over hundreds of years. All right. In 1910, Korea was annexed by Japan. But in 1945, with the defeat in the Second World War, her control over Korea also came to an end. Now she got divided into 2, that is North Korea and South Korea. These 2 divisions came under the influence of 2 different ideologies, that is the North Korea coming under the influence of the communist and the South Korean under the influence of the capitalist. Okay. Now, in 1950, the North Korean, it started to invade. It started to invade South Korea. And since South Korea is under the capitalist regime of government, the US, okay, the Western power, they asked the United Nations to intervene in this crisis. So the United Nations, it condemned the North Korea and called them as an invader. Now, under the United Nations banner, forces was made. All right. These forces, it composed of the US and other countries. This force was led by an American general, that is General MacArthur. Okay. When the UN was involved in this crisis, China, she jumped in support of North Korea. Now we see that the conflict between the North Korea and South Korea is resulting in a direct confrontation with the 2 superpowers. That is the capitalists and the communists. Now, the role of the non-alignment movement, okay, especially in their mediating. We see the first feature, right, the isolationism. They play the role of mediating between these 2 crises. Now, peace was made. Finally, peace was made between these 2 countries, but the conflict is still on. Okay. All right. Okay, the next crisis is the Cuban crisis. Okay, Cuban crisis. Fidel Castro. Okay, Fidel Castro, he overthrew the Batista government. The Batista government, and he formed his own government. All right, the Batista government was a capitalist government, and Fidel Castro, he introduced communist government. Okay. Now, Cuba, she was equipped with 8 assistants, especially from the US in industrial. Okay. When he introduced communists, he feared that the US will come and invade. So he asked assistance, especially from the USSR. And yes, USSR replied in a positive manner. She equipped Cuba with military and missiles. All right. The presence of missile in Cuba, okay, it posed a serious threat to US security because Cuba, she was just 140 kilometers away from the United States. During this time, this president of US, that is John F. Kennedy, he acted fast and he condemned this. The role of the USSR, especially in equipping Cuba with missiles. So he asked the United States to prepare for a nuclear war. Okay? Now, the USSR, the leader of USSR during that time was Khrushchev. Okay. Khrushchev, through his wisdom, okay, he acted in a positive way. Through his wisdom, he asked his countrymen to withdraw missiles from Cuba, and finally they withdrew the presence of this in Cuba and the US. And the Russians, finally there was a peace. Okay. Special name to be mentioned in this conflict is the Indian Prime Minister, that is Jawaharlal Nehru, representing the non-aligned nations. He also played the role of a mediator in this Cuban crisis. So through this crisis, peace was resolved and a good relations between the US and the USSR was also made. What is the impact of this crisis? The impact of this crisis is that both the superpower countries, they realize that there is no winner, okay, in a nuclear war. Because in a nuclear war, it will lead to the wipeout of the entire human civilization. Okay. The next impact is the LTBT. The signing of the LTBT that happened in the 1st of August 1963. LTBT stands for Limited Test Ban Treaty. Okay? In this Limited Test Ban Treaty, here, test ban, it's especially referring to the testing of nuclear weapons. Okay. This treaty was signed by 3 countries. Okay, we have Britain, we have US, and we have Soviet Russia. These 3 countries signed the LTBT on 5th of August 1963. Okay, this treaty, it banned the test of nuclear weapons in atmosphere, that is in outer area, as well as underwater. Alright, this is the content of the LTBT. Okay, so in Unit 9, the important topics under Unit 9 will be Cold War. And Bernard Baruch, here we have mentioned him in the first session. He is the first person to use this term, Cold War. Okay, and the second important topic will be the causes of Cold War, bipolarity. That is the world divided into 2 superpowers. Okay, and the challenge to bipolarity was in the form of the non-alignment movement. And the non-alignment, we have discussed the features and the aims and the major conflict in the Cold War. That is, the first is the Korean crisis and the second is the Cuban crisis. And under the Cuban crisis, we have an important impact, that is the signing of the LTBT, that is the Limited Test Ban Treaty, and this happened in the 5th of August 1963. So with this, we have come to an end to chapter 9, that is on Cold War. In the next session, we'll continue with a new topic. That's all for this session. Thank you.